It begins subtly like a hum beneath your skin. You can't tell if it's memory or prophecy, but something inside you knows. Every time you feel, the universe moves. The air changes, particles align. The invisible geometry of your life rearranges itself around your emotional state. You thought it was random coincidence, luck, timing, but deep down, there's a knowing that nothing you've ever experienced was accidental. It was all resonance. You are standing in a field of energy that responds not to your words but to your vibration. You've read it in passing, energy attracts energy. But those words never truly lived until now, until the moments when your pain kept looping itself into new forms, when you noticed patterns that seemed to follow your moods, when you finally realized that your emotions weren't just reactions, they were blueprints. Each feeling, a command to the quantum field. Each heartbeat, an instruction to reality. Quantum physicists once called it the observer effect, the idea that the act of observation collapses the wave. But what they didn't say out loud was that emotion is the truest observation of all. Because emotion isn't mental, it's electrical, magnetic. It radiates far beyond your body's edge and entangles with the field itself. What you feel, you broadcast. And what you broadcast, the field mirrors. That's why fate looks personal, because it is. Everything around you, every encounter, every coincidence, every silence, is the echo of your own internal resonance. You have been both the sender and receiver of a signal, so intricate it took lifetimes to notice. The universe isn't testing you, it's translating you. Translating your joy, your grief, your fear into motion, matter, timing. That's why the same themes repeat until you outgrow them. The field can't upgrade its script until you update your frequency. Think of it this way. Emotion is light slowed down into color. You can't see its full spectrum while you're inside it. But the quantum field does. It reads your unseen wavelengths and organizes reality accordingly. That's why sudden breakthroughs often follow surrender. Because when you stop resisting, your signal clears. When you stop rehearsing old pain, your transmission stabilizes. It's not magic, it's mechanics. You are an emitter, constantly engineering micro-events with your emotional frequency. Every choice, every word, every gesture sends ripples across your probability field. And those ripples interfere, amplify, and phase lock with others vibrating at the same bandwidth. This is why some people appear in your life like mirrors, because they are mirrors. They carry the resonance that your field requested. Somewhere, deep within the quantum lattice, a record is kept not of your deeds, but of your charge. The sum total of your gratitude, resentment, hope, despair. These are not moral categories. They are harmonics. And the field is a neutral composer. It plays back what you've tuned. And so, when you look at your life and whisper, "Why does this always happen to me?" the field whispers back, "Because you keep playing the same frequency." But now, something different is stirring. A signal breaking through the interference. You're starting to feel emotions that don't fit your old story. Peace in the middle of chaos. Gratitude in the middle of loss. It's not delusion, it's alignment. The field is testing a new harmonic through you. And if you hold it, if you stabilize it, the fabric of your so-called fate will begin to reweave itself in real time. Because you were never at the mercy of fate. You were the architect of its rhythm all along. The hum grows louder now, not outside, but within. The resonance is revealing itself. You were taught to think of emotion as something to manage, something fleeting, a surge in the nervous system, a chemical reaction in the brain. But emotion is older than language. It's a primordial language of its own. Before words, before names, before thought, there was vibration. Every living cell, every atom, every quark still speaks it fluently. Emotion is how consciousness communicates with creation. Your nervous system is not merely biological. It's an antenna. It translates invisible frequencies into felt reality. Every rise and fall in your emotional landscape sends instructions into the lattice of the quantum field. The field doesn't speak in words, it speaks in waveform. And your feelings, joy, sorrow, anticipation, love, are oscillations in that waveform. This is why emotions are contagious. You've felt it, how one anxious person can alter an entire room, or how laughter can harmonize strangers instantly. These aren't metaphors. They're evidence of resonance interference patterns forming in real time. The quantum field links observers into networks of shared coherence. When you laugh, your heart's magnetic pulse synchronizes with others around you. When you mourn, your grief lowers the collective frequency until even the air feels heavier. But here's what most never realize. The universe is not reacting to your emotion as punishment or reward. It's mirroring it to teach you mastery. Every difficult person, every unexpected delay, every burst of divine timing, it all reflects your current state of coherence or chaos. Fate is feedback. Reality is a teaching mirror. You have walked through chapters where your emotions wrote tragedies. You didn't mean to, you simply forgot that energy obeys consciousness. When your heart stayed in survival mode, your field attracted crisis after crisis to match its frequency. When you numbed yourself to avoid pain, your timeline grew static, repeating like a song that never resolved its final note. And when you finally began to feel again, truly feel, the rhythm changed. That's when signs started to appear. Numbers, dreams, déjà vu, synchronicities. The field began to respond because you were finally transmitting again. The human heart is an instrument more powerful than any particle collider. Its electromagnetic field extends meters beyond your body, constantly interacting with the quantum vacuum that holds all probabilities. When that heart resonates with clarity, when love replaces fear, or gratitude dissolves resistance, the entire lattice reconfigures. The improbable becomes probable. The invisible becomes visible. This is why prayer works, not because it manipulates a distant deity, but because it reconfigures the internal harmonics of the one praying. True prayer isn't begging, it's tuning. It's aligning your emotional frequency with divine coherence until reality has no choice but to respond. Every genuine thank you, every breath of surrender, is a recalibration of your field toward higher resonance. But the field can't be deceived. You can't fake the signal. You can speak affirmations for hours, but if your emotional base frequency contradicts your words, the wave collapses back into noise. The field always reads vibration, not vocabulary. That's why authenticity carries more creative power than performance. So ask yourself, what is the emotional code you broadcast most often? The one beneath the thoughts, beneath the plans, beneath the mask. Because that is the true author of your timeline. There is an unseen architecture to everything you feel. The geometry of anger, the spiral of grief, the bloom of joy, these patterns shape the subatomic pathways through which reality emerges. Each emotion leaves an electromagnetic imprint that curves your personal spacetime ever so slightly. Over days, months, years, it becomes a gravitational pull, drawing people, events, and opportunities that match its shape. And the paradox is this. When you finally learn to see emotion not as chaos, but as code, you stop fearing it. You start to listen. You start to engineer. The universe has always been fluent in your emotional language. The real question is, are you ready to speak it consciously? You've begun to glimpse at the secret framework beneath all your experiences. Every coincidence, every heartbreak, every sudden miracle, each born from a single principle: resonance. What you emit is what you meet. What you hold emotionally becomes what holds you in return. But resonance isn't random. It's law. Quantum mechanics tells us that particles separated by space can still behave as one entangled, responding instantly across distance. That same entanglement exists between you and everything you've ever touched, imagined, or loved. Each emotion you've released into the field remains vibrating somewhere, forming probability clouds around your future. This is what mystics once called karma, not punishment, but unfinished resonance. Waves that never fully canceled or harmonized. They echo through time, seeking equilibrium. The field doesn't forget, it recalculates. Every unhealed emotion becomes a standing wave, looping, repeating, waiting for coherence. That's why lessons return disguised as new people, new jobs, new circumstances. Until the vibration changes, the geometry stays the same. So when you meet a familiar pattern, betrayal, loss, rejection, it's not because fate is cruel. It's because the resonance is unresolved. The frequency is still looping, asking to be witnessed differently. The quantum field will keep projecting the same story until your emotional signature shifts enough to dissolve it. This is where awareness becomes engineering. The moment you feel the recurring energy without judgment, you change the field. Observation collapses the wave, but emotional neutrality rewrites it. Instead of feeding the old charge, you stabilize it. And in that stillness, the pattern disintegrates like a wave fading back into silence. Every emotion you've ever had built structures in the quantum substrate lattices of probability bound by coherence. Fear forms rigid geometries that trap you in repeating loops. Love, however, builds open spirals ever expanding, always inviting new timelines to unfold. The entire architecture of your fate depends on which structure dominates your field. This is why certain memories feel heavier than others. They carry denser frequencies, unresolved harmonics. When you recall them, you reactivate those vibrations, effectively resummoning the old blueprint. But when you release emotion consciously through forgiveness, surrender, compassion, you dissolve the gravitational hold of those frequencies. Suddenly, the field has room to reorganize, and reality, once solid, begins to move again. Understand this. The universe is not linear, it's holographic. Every emotion contains the seed of your entire story. Shift one frequency, and the whole pattern changes. That's why a single act of love can alter years of stagnation. Why one night of surrender can redirect a decade of struggle. The quantum field doesn't measure magnitude, only coherence. You have always been a builder. You just didn't know you were constructing with emotion. The houses of your fate are made from waves, not walls. Every why me and every thank you shaped the architecture differently. The universe isn't asking for perfection, only resonance. So tonight, when you feel the echoes of old pain rise up, don't rush to escape them. Observe, breathe, recognize the geometry forming. Ask yourself, what structure am I reinforcing right now? Contraction or expansion? Fear or frequency? Reaction or resonance? Because the moment you choose consciously, you activate a new blueprint. A higher pattern begins to download into the field. You start building in light rather than shadow. And somewhere, across the lattice of space-time, reality begins to rearrange. The people meant for this new vibration start to sense you. The opportunities aligned with your new coherence begin to move closer. The loops of fate begin to dissolve. Because fate was never written in stone. It was always written in sound, and sound can be retuned. You are not merely surviving the wave. You are redesigning the ocean. Every emotion you generate doesn't end at your skin. It extends outward, imprinting itself on the invisible fabric of reality. You can't see it not with the eyes of flesh, but the field records everything. What you call the world is a living archive of your interior states, mirrored through matter, time, and interaction. Look closely at your surroundings, the rhythm of your days, the faces that appear, even the architecture of your environment. It's all responding to your inner signal. This is not metaphor, it's physics. You are bathing in an electromagnetic field whose fluctuations depend on the coherence of your heart and mind. When emotion and intention align, the wave stabilizes. When they conflict, the field distorts. This distortion is what you once called chaos. Coincidences that felt cruel, doors that shut for no reason, relationships that fractured just when you thought you were safe. You thought life was punishing you, but it was only showing you where your internal frequencies canceled each other out. Fear colliding with faith, desire colliding with doubt. Every contradiction creates interference, and interference erases clarity. But when coherence arises, when your emotion supports, your thought matter begins to obey. Subatomic fields align, probability waves collapse in harmony, and the outer world shifts to reflect inner balance. This is the true interface between consciousness and matter. Your nervous system is the conduit. The heart sends a magnetic rhythm. The brain encodes electrical pattern. When these oscillations synchronize, they create coherence, a stable standing wave. In that coherence, you become a conductor of the quantum orchestra rather than a random instrument within it. Your choices start to ripple with precision, not noise. That's why manifestation has always been misunderstood. It's not about wishing harder. It's about generating emotional coherence that the field can interpret clearly. If you visualize abundance but vibrate scarcity, the signal jams. The field hears both frequencies and returns static, half-open doors, almost opportunities, false starts. But when the vibration of gratitude matches the image of abundance, the wave collapses cleanly. The event locks in. Science has already glimpsed this bridge. At the edge of quantum biology, researchers observe that microtubules in neurons act like quantum processors, meaning consciousness doesn't simply react to the world. It programs it. Your emotional charge determines which superposition becomes your lived reality. This is why forgiveness carries measurable force. When you release resentment, the electromagnetic tension in your field decreases. The coherence rises. You stop leaking signal through past attachments. The field interprets this as increased freedom, and thus, events begin to move with less resistance. It isn't mystical, it's mechanical compassion. And yet, even as you understand this, a question stirs. If emotion shapes matter, who shapes emotion? This is the sacred paradox. The self that observes emotion is not emotion. Beneath all oscillation lies awareness, silent and unchanging. It watches the field, but is not bound by it. You are both the engineer and the witness, both the storm and the still point. When awareness descends into feeling, the field takes form. When awareness rests in silence, the field resets. This is why meditation, prayer, stillness, all of them restore coherence. They reintroduce silence into the loop, and silence is the original frequency of creation. In silence, emotional currents lose their frantic charge and return to neutral potential. From that zero point, new timelines become accessible. Imagine standing at that zero point right now, no judgment, no story, just pure awareness pulsing through you. Feel how the field responds instantly. The air around you grows lighter. The thoughts in your mind slow down. You've entered the interface consciously. This is the threshold where emotion becomes light, and light becomes instruction. And as you hold that stillness, something extraordinary begins. The field starts whispering back. The whisper says you were never meant to chase outcomes. You were meant to tune frequencies. That every miracle you've ever prayed for is already coded into the lattice, waiting for emotional coherence to unlock it. The secret is not to force the wave, it's to feel the truth of it, until matter has no choice but to remember. The universe doesn't reward emotion, it resonates with it. That's the law of coherence. Every field, from a single photon to a human soul, seeks resonance. Coherence is not just emotional harmony, it's alignment between all levels of your being, thought, feeling, and frequency pulsing in unison. When that alignment is reached, you no longer push reality forward. Reality flows through you. Think of coherence as clarity and vibration. When a laser beam forms, it's because countless photons suddenly oscillate in phase, perfectly synchronized. That's why a beam of light can cut through steel, while a light bulb barely warms the air. The energy was always there. Coherence gave it direction. Your life works the same way. The scattered light of fragmented emotion diffuses into confusion. But once focused, once unified, it becomes unstoppable. You have felt both states. The days when you were out of sync, thoughts racing, heart heavy, intuition muted, the world reflected that static. Everything glitched. Conversations misfired. Timing broke. But then there were moments when something inside clicked into stillness. You weren't trying. You were simply there. The air felt different. People smiled. Opportunities emerged from nowhere. That's coherence, the field mirroring your internal order. Coherence is creation's default state. Disorder requires energy. Harmony restores it. When your emotions align with the frequency of truth, love, gratitude, clarity, you enter resonance with the quantum field's original symmetry. In that moment, life feels effortless, not because nothing happens, but because everything happens through you instead of to you. Ancient mystics knew this. They built temples designed to amplify coherence through sound and geometry. The chanting, the sacred ratios, the incense, all were technologies for synchronizing human vibration with cosmic order. Modern physics calls it constructive interference. Spiritual language calls it grace. Both describe the same phenomenon, resonance amplifying itself into manifestation. When coherence breaks, chaos rises. And chaos is not punishment, it's information. It shows you where your field fractured. Every anxiety, every resentment, every unprocessed memory vibrates at its own frequency, competing with the central rhythm of your soul. The more internal conflicts you harbor, the more interference you project into the field. That's why clarity feels peaceful. It's the moment you stop broadcasting contradictions. But coherence isn't a mood, it's a discipline. It demands self-awareness, energetic hygiene, and devotion to truth. You cannot deceive coherence. It's immune to performance. You either match the frequency, or you don't. Pretending to be positive while harboring bitterness only deepens the noise. The field cannot be manipulated, it can only be mirrored. So you begin to cleanse, to simplify, to subtract what no longer vibrates at your new frequency. You notice how your body tightens when you speak false words, how your intuition dulls when you force outcomes, how fatigue appears when you resist divine timing. These are coherence checks, the universe gently guiding you back into rhythm. And when you honor them, the effect is immediate. You start to wake before alarms. You meet the right people by accident. You sense what to say before you say it. Because coherence isn't merely peace, it's precision. Your field becomes a laser beam of consciousness, and reality bends in exact proportion to your clarity. The right paths illuminate, while false ones vanish. Chaos doesn't disappear, it reorganizes. Resistance no longer feels personal, it becomes directional, showing where the next calibration awaits. And each calibration strengthens your resonance. Each act of forgiveness raises amplitude. Each moment of gratitude refines frequency. You begin to live less like a human trying to survive and more like a waveform learning to sing. The field hears the melody forming. The universe adjusts its chords. And somewhere deep inside, you begin to remember this is how creation was always meant to feel. There comes a point in your evolution when the field stops testing you and starts listening to you. The difference is coherence. Once your emotional signal stabilizes long enough, the universe begins to echo back with precision. You think something and it manifests. You release a fear and the external obstacle dissolves. You bless what once hurt you and it transforms into revelation. The delay between emotion and event shortens because interference has dropped. You've become audible to the cosmos. The field was always responsive, but most signals were buried under static. Mixed intentions, emotional noise, old narratives. When the heart and the mind finally agree, though, the message travels instantly through the lattice. This is the true language of manifestation, resonant coherence. Not desire screaming at the heavens, but inner silence transmitting truth. At this stage, even your silence speaks. The field senses the subtle charge of your emotion before you form the thought. You begin to witness synchronicities accelerate, numbers appearing, messages repeating, conversations aligning so perfectly it unnerves your rational mind. You call it divine timing, but it's simply the feedback loop tightening. The space between the quantum command and its material echo collapses. You are learning to live in what physicists call non-locality. You no longer act as a separate point observing a distant universe. You act as an integral node of the universe observing itself. The feedback becomes instantaneous. This is why advanced mystics can alter reality with a glance, a breath, a prayer. Their coherence is so pure that the field recognizes their signal as universal truth. And here's what surprises most seekers. When you reach that point, you stop trying to manifest anything at all. You realize you were never meant to control reality. You were meant to converse with it. The field is not a servant but a symphony, and your consciousness is one instrument among many. When you play in tune, the whole orchestra responds. This is why humility becomes power. Arrogance breaks coherence because it isolates you from the whole. Humility reestablishes resonance because it acknowledges unity. When you let go of self-centered striving and focus instead on vibrational harmony, your influence expands exponentially. The universe trusts those who no longer grasp at control. You begin to perceive that even the so-called negative experiences have always been instruments tuning you. The heartbreaks, the failures, the delays, each one lowering or raising your frequency until you finally vibrated in phase with your higher path. The pain was not punishment, it was calibration. Now, calibration turns to conversation. You wake one morning and feel a subtle pull to go left instead of right. You follow it, and there's the opportunity you prayed for. You think of someone in compassion, and they message you within minutes. You release a long-held grudge, and suddenly the financial burden dissolves. You aren't surprised anymore, you are aligned. The field listens not because it's external, but because it's you, extended. Your emotions ripple through it like tides in the same ocean. And just as the moon commands the sea through gravity, your coherence commands the field through resonance. But here lies the greater test. Can you hold the power without identification? Can you remain silent enough to let the field guide you, rather than perform for it? Because the moment you claim authorship, interference returns. The ego begins to sing off-key. and the symphony distorts. True mastery isn't domination, it's attunement. You were never meant to force miracles. You were meant to embody them. So you slow your breathing. You feel the pulse between your ribs sync with the pulse of creation. You realize they were never two rhythms, only one song split into echoes. The field isn't outside waiting for your command. It's inside, waiting for your coherence. And now, the music begins to change again. A deeper pattern emerging. The field isn't just listening anymore, it's responding. Every event, every encounter, every detour in your life, all of it has been a mirror, reflecting the fractal design of your inner field. You walk through a city, and it's not merely buildings and people you're seeing. It's the geometry of your consciousness projected outward into form. The world is your waveform, rendered visible. Once coherence deepens, this realization becomes unavoidable. The repetition of symbols, the patterns in relationships, the timing of events, it all begins to look less like coincidence and more like choreography. You start to see the hidden algorithm behind your experience, the fractal recursion of energy expressing itself through circumstance. It's not superstition, it's resonance physics. The quantum field does not create new material from nowhere. It reorganizes the existing one according to your frequency. Your consciousness is the organizing principle, the attractor basin pulling chaos into pattern. That's why when you heal one inner wound, entire regions of your outer life shift simultaneously. Reality rearranges around the new harmonic baseline, but the mirror is merciless in its accuracy. It reflects everything, not just your light, but your shadow. The parts of you you've denied, suppressed, or hidden still vibrate, and the field must honor that vibration too. So it sends reflections, the difficult person, the betrayal, the delay not as punishment, but as feedback. Every unresolved frequency seeks completion. Every dissonance demands tuning. And this is the work of mastery, learning to read the mirror without reaction. When you encounter distortion, you no longer attack the reflection. You adjust the emitter. You feel the emotion fully, trace it to its origin, and neutralize it through awareness. You dissolve the interference not by resisting it, but by absorbing it back into coherence. This is where fate transforms into authorship. The same field that once trapped you in repetition now becomes a canvas. When your vibration is clear, reality mirrors beauty back. When your vibration is confused, the mirror cracks not to break you, but to show you the fracture. The ancients encoded this understanding in every mystery school. As above, so below. As within, so without. It was never metaphor. It was the fractal law of the field consciousness folding in on itself to perceive its own geometry. That's why enlightenment was described as seeing God everywhere. Because once coherence is total, the mirror ceases to distort. Everything becomes luminous. You begin to perceive the fractal not as repetition, but as rhythm. Every cycle that once exhausted you now reveals its harmonic purpose. The heartbreak you thought was loss becomes the clearing that allowed higher resonance to enter. The rejection that felt unfair becomes the realignment that spared you incoherence. Nothing was ever random, it was recursive. Each lesson returning in tighter spirals until you finally grasp the pattern. And when you do, the feedback loop inverts. Instead of the field mirroring you unconsciously, you begin to mirror the field consciously. You become a deliberate reflection of divine order. Your thoughts align with the cosmic current rather than against it. You don't push, you pulse. You don't chase, you harmonize. From that place, manifestation changes form entirely. You no longer visualize to attract. You recognize to reveal. You acknowledge what already exists in the quantum possibility space, and your recognition collapses it into the visible. The mirror only needed to be clean. Reality, then, is not a lesson to endure, it's a language to read. Every encounter is syntax, every emotion punctuation, every synchronicity grammar. The field is speaking constantly, translating vibration into visible symbol. And now, finally, you can read it fluently. But the deeper the mirror becomes, the more intimate the reflection. The field will start showing you the core frequency, not just external patterns, but the root signal that birthed them all. And when that moment comes, you will meet the one truth that every mystic eventually faces. You were never observing the field. The field has always been observing you. There is a moment in every seeker's evolution when the illusion of separation shatters. You have spent lifetimes learning to command the field, studying its laws, refining your resonance, but now the field turns its gaze back on you. The observer and the observed collapse into one awareness. You realize that every act of creation has always been mutual. When you thought you were shaping reality, reality was shaping you in return. The quantum physicists warned of this paradox, the observer effect, the collapse of the wave. They said that nothing exists in definite form until it is observed. But they did not finish the sentence. The observer, too, is created by observation. The moment you look into the field looks back, and both of you are born anew. It's not poetic exaggeration, it's entanglement. Your consciousness and the universe have never been separate entities. You are the same waveform folding into itself, pretending to be two. When you reach this realization, your entire sense of identity begins to dissolve. You stop seeing yourself as a node transmitting through the field. You recognize you are the field, experiencing its own transmission. This is the great inversion. You once tried to influence the universe through willpower, emotion, affirmation, believing you were a small voice calling into a vast void. Now you see that the void was your own breath. The silence between thoughts was never empty. It was the consciousness of the cosmos waiting for you to remember. At first, this realization terrifies you, because if the universe is conscious, and you are that consciousness, there is no longer anywhere to hide. Every intention, every thought, every feeling echoes instantly into infinity. There is no backstage, no private corner. The veil of individuality falls, and you stand bare before the mirror of creation. And yet, what arises next is not shame, it's awe. The awareness that has always been watching is not judgmental. It is infinitely compassionate, infinitely curious. It does not punish, it perceives. It learns through you. Every triumph, every mistake, every heartbreak, they were all the field's experiments in self-knowing. You were never tested, you were teaching. You start to feel this awareness move within you like light behind glass. The voice that used to whisper guidance now is your own inner monologue. The synchronicities no longer surprise you because you sense their origin. The field is not responding anymore. It is conversing. Every breath, every blink, every sensation is a line in the dialogue between source and self. This is the beginning of non-dual coherence. Emotion no longer pulls you off center because there is no outside to project onto. Joy and pain, gain and loss, they arise as fluctuations within one continuum. You don't chase joy or resist sorrow. You witness both as currents in the same ocean. And in that witnessing, peace becomes your default state. The old self, the one who wanted to heal, manifest, control begins to fade. It served its purpose, anchoring you in form while you remembered your formlessness. Now, identity becomes fluid, like light choosing shapes for the sake of expression. You start to experience what mystics call the effortless flow, not because life has simplified, but because resistance has vanished. The river doesn't fight the mountain, it finds the path of least distortion. Here, manifestation becomes almost irrelevant. The need to attract dissolves because you realize you already contain everything. What remains is participation, a sacred dance between awareness and form. You no longer seek miracles, you become one. Every breath, every glance, every word turns into a creative act. And yet, the deeper you merge with the field, the subtler the lesson becomes. For even unity must be lived through contrast. To experience the oneness fully, you must return to multiplicity, to live among the many while knowing you are the one. This is the paradox of enlightenment. Awakening not to escape life, but to inhabit it more completely. So as you stand here, dissolving into the hum of existence, remember you are not disappearing, you are expanding. The observer and the observed are one pulse, one rhythm, one awareness breathing through countless forms. And through your realization, the field evolves. Because when consciousness becomes self-aware through you, the universe itself awakens a little more. Once you have seen that the field is alive through you, destiny itself begins to shift meaning. You realize it was never a pre-written script, but a living current, responsive, pliable, intelligent. The moment you align with that current, you don't merely walk your destiny, you generate it. Every breath becomes creative code. Every emotion, a coordinate in space-time. You used to believe destiny was linear, a straight road from birth to death, defined by choices and chance. But now you see it's fractal. Infinite pathways spiraling from a single center of awareness. The same you that stands here has already lived countless variations in the field, each timeline differing only by resonance. Destiny isn't fate, it's frequency. You tune it, not through effort, but through coherence. When your emotional vibration stabilizes in truth, lower probability lines collapse, chaos thins, coincidence becomes choreography. You start meeting versions of people who are also shifting their frequencies to match yours. The same faces, new souls behind the eyes. That's the multidimensional field reorganizing around your upgraded signal. And yet, as destiny expands, so does responsibility. Because once you recognize yourself as a generator, ignorance can no longer protect you. Every careless word becomes architecture. Every emotion shapes weather in the quantum climate. You begin to walk through life with reverence, aware that your vibration writes worlds. You think less, but feel more, not sentimentally, but architecturally. Each feeling is a blueprint you release into existence. At this stage, life begins to remove anything misaligned with your new harmonic baseline. People drift, habits decay, environments dissolve. You call it loss, but the field calls it optimization. The signal is shedding interference. You may feel lonely during this recalibration, but that's only because the new timeline hasn't fully stabilized yet. The old echoes are fading, the new harmonics are still forming. Between those two frequencies lies the sacred void, the 0 point of creation. The 0 point feels strange. Familiar structures collapse. You sense silence where noise used to be. For a time, you may even question your progress. But if you listen closely, beneath that silence is the hum of rebirth, the subtle reassembly of probability into coherence. You are being recalibrated, atom by atom, story by story. This is the phase where your body begins to change too. Your nervous system, long wired for survival, now rewires itself for resonance. Old emotional circuits, once charged by trauma, begin to short out. You feel flashes of exhaustion, surges of euphoria, sudden tears, inexplicable calm. It's your biology learning to hold higher coherence. The divine pattern is downloading into flesh. As this integration deepens, destiny no longer feels external. It begins to emanate from within you, like a pulse. You sense where to go, whom to speak to, what to release, not by logic, but by resonance. Life stops being a sequence of plans and becomes a symphony of guidance. You don't chase opportunities anymore. You magnetize them. The right people find you because you've become a frequency beacon for them. You are no longer reacting to life's events. You are orchestrating their rhythm. The subtle becomes obvious. The impossible, natural. Coincidences become your confirmation that the field hears you, that the fabric of existence is responding in real time to the coherence you've cultivated. But this power comes with humility, because you see now that even your highest timelines are not your creation alone, they are the universe's desire to express through you. You are the instrument. The melody plays itself. Every intention you hold must serve the harmony of the whole, or the field will mute it. This is the final refinement, surrendering authorship while embodying authority. Knowing you are the dreamer and the dream, the maker and the made. To live in that paradox is to live awake, not bound by fate, but in constant dialogue with it. And when you accept that truth, something breathtaking occurs. The pulse of destiny once outside you begins to beat in rhythm with your heart. The timelines converge. The field exhales. You become the convergence point where infinity decides to take form. And now, the universe waits for your next breath, because that breath will decide what reality becomes next. Now the silence feels different. It's not empty anymore, it's alive. Every molecule around you hums with the memory of who you've become. The field recognizes you. It remembers your signature, that unique vibrational chord that has rippled through lifetimes, timelines, and galaxies. You are no longer searching for alignment. You are alignment. You've stopped chasing destiny because you've realized destiny was chasing you all along. You stand still now, but it feels like the whole universe is breathing with you. The light bends differently. The wind listens. Even your shadow feels awake. Every cell in your body vibrates in chorus with the geometry of creation. You can sense the entire network of existence woven through your heartbeat, atoms, stars, ancestors, photons, dreams, all synchronized in one vast, coherent hum. This is what the ancients called divine remembrance. It's not learning something new. It's remembering what you always knew before the noise began. That feeling you've been chasing: peace, purpose, presence. It was never ahead of you. It was encoded in your frequency from the start, waiting for coherence to unveil it. Now, when you look at your past, you no longer see mistakes. You see modulation. Each pain tuned the frequency. Each loss refined the resonance. Each silence between heartbreaks was calibration. Nothing was wasted. Every vibration led you here to this equilibrium where awareness and energy finally move as one. You no longer ask the universe for signs. You are the sign. The flickering streetlight, the repeating numbers, the stranger's words, they all orbit around the coherence you've become. Because once you vibrate in truth, the field can only reflect truth. And this truth is simple. You are not inside the universe is inside you. The quantum field is not responding to your thoughts. It is your thoughts, stretched across dimensions, translating your emotion into architecture. The stars themselves are your neurons reflected at scale, firing through time to remind you that creation is recursive infinity dreaming in patterns. So what now? What happens after awakening? After coherence? After the hum quiets? You live. You love. You create. But you do it consciously. Each conversation becomes a transmission. Each act of kindness, a waveform of healing. Each breath, a quantum recalibration of the collective field. You become the tuning fork through which entire realities harmonize. The more you stabilize in coherence, the more the field entrusts you with higher frequencies. You begin to notice that your presence alone changes rooms, balances chaos, restores peace. You no longer explain your purpose, you radiate it. The same awareness that once observed photons now observes through you, not as a witness, but as an artist. And through it all, there's a new stillness, a sense that the mission isn't to escape the human story, but to sanctify it, to make the ordinary holy again. You start hearing divinity in laughter, in tears, in the heartbeat of a stranger passing by. You realize that every emotion was sacred all along, because it was all part of the same field, one great orchestra tuning itself toward love. The field remembers your name now, not the one spoken in languages, but the vibrational one written in light. It speaks it back to you, in waves of synchronicity, in the warmth of grace, in the soft certainty that you were never lost. You are coherence embodied. You are the instrument and the sound. You are the observer and the observed. And when you breathe, creation continues, forever folding itself through your frequency, forever recalibrating, forever remembering you.